And I'm here in my home folder where I'll create my new notebook. So I'll go here to new, and then we'll go here to Python and open the code environment where I want to work in. Okay, so we've already seen this when we set up our environment, but let's then open or create our new notebook. This notebook, I will call it working notebook. Where can I change the name of this notebook or rename this notebook? Here in the untitled, where you see now untitled. Of course, untitled is the name of my notebook right now. I don't want it to be called untitled, so I'll change this. And I'll enter a new notebook name. In this case, I'm going to call working notebook. Okay, and hit rename. Okay, so as you can see, working notebook, and then click enter or rename, and that's it. Now, we can execute code in these blocks that we have right here. This is a block of code, but you can also have blocks of text or even headings that are blocks that will give us a header for our Jupyter notebook as a title. For example, I'll go here and our first exercise or the first code along that we'll have here is Python as a calculator. Now, of course, this is being interpreted as code right now, and it will yield an error when I try to run this cell. But if I go here and put heading, you'll notice that, clicking OK, you'll notice that this is no longer being interpreted as code, but as text. Okay, so if I hit run, I'll run this cell, and I have a title in the place of where I had that sentence. If I click 2 times on top of this notebook cell, notice that the cells are highlighted, the cell that you've just selected. And if you go here, you can edit for whatever you want. For example, and click run. There you go. We have here then our title as example. We can change or write whatever we want. This is normally called a markdown cell. Okay, a markdown cell interprets pure text. It also interprets some specific text that you can give, for example, to have code and to have bold or italic font. But right now, just know that this interprets text. Okay, you can run cells in notebooks 2 ways. Either you click the cell and hit run. You don't need to double click the cell. For example, for markdown, double clicking will alter or change the way that you are working or writing text. If you just click once, the cell is already highlighted as blue. That means that you have this cell selected, and when you hit run, this cell will execute. If you go here and hit shift enter, you'll also do the same thing. I prefer to do shift enter because it saves me from going to the mouse, going to this run, and just use this combination of keywords. That's much more practical, and I tend to use that. You'll see that throughout the Codaling lectures. For your case, do whatever you like. Of course, it's a personal preference. Okay, so this was a markdown cell. Well, we can write text, but of course this is not a text editor, right? We are not working with Microsoft Word or Google Docs or something like that. We are not working with text editors. We want this to interpret Python code, and we can do that by going to this cell. Notice that this is a new cell, and when you have this in, means that this is a code cell, which means that it will interpret Python code, and it will return me something when I write on this code. As you can see, when you write like code throughout a lot of cells, in the same environment, in the same notebook, those variables or something that you type will pass from one cell to the other, and you can work around with objects in the environment altogether without any problems. So you are not restricted to do the same code in the same cell and not being able to manipulate variables that you create on one of the cells on another cell. You don't have any issue with that, as we will see throughout the lectures. Now, important, I have here a code cell, and I'm going to type a small bit of code, and this is an example that we will see throughout this section, which is using Python as a calculator. For example, 2 plus 2, if I type this and hit shift enter, I'll have a 4 as a return. This means that here in this notebook, what I've done is run some Python code, because the 2 plus 2 is being interpreted in Python code, okay? And I got as a return the returning calculation, which is a 4. And 4 is indeed the result from this mathematical operator. Okay, so we can use Python as a calculator, as we will see throughout this section, with all the mathematical rules that we know. Okay, so we can output code in 2 ways, or in this case in Jupyter Notebook. We can output just by using the out, or in this case the code that is returned from the cell, which normally is the last instruction that you are doing on a cell, because you can have multiple code inside. For example, 4 plus 4 and 2 plus 2, I'll only get as a return the 4. The 8 is not in here because the cell returns the last instruction. If I want to return multiple instructions from the same cell, I have to do explicit prints. Okay, so if I do here print open close parentheses with, for example, 2 plus 2 and execute this new cell, notice that also you can create new cells in two ways. When you run the last cell of the notebook and execute it with run or shift plus enter, you'll create a new cell down below. For example, here, run, as you can see, I have here a new cell to continue my script. If you want, and I can, for example, cut deleted cells, it cuts or deletes the entire cell. It's saved on my transfer area, where you like keep the copy paste that you do in Windows. But if you go here, insert cell below, in this plus, you'll insert a new cell right below, where you can write more code. Okay, so now notice we have here print 2 plus 2. We don't have the out from the Jupyter notebook. That means that this is not picking up any code that it's returned from the cell, but I can do something cool, which is a multi-code or multi-line code statement, print 4 plus 4, and now I have the two results, 8 and 4. Okay, this is how Jupyter notebooks run Python code. Okay, they use these cells, this kind of structure of having cells where you can run code. As you will see, this will be pretty handy for us also to save variables and all that. Don't worry about this, we'll get there in the meantime. But this is like super cool because it enables us to write code at the same time that we write text. And you'll see that in the lectures that I've prepared for you or in the notebooks that I've prepared for you. Okay, so you got here an overall of Jupyter Notebook, at least the most basic stuff. If we will use other Jupyter Notebook functionalities throughout the course, I'll make sure that I'll explain them when we get to them. But I think it's better if we just have here the overview of the most basic things that we can do in Jupyter, because this will probably be 99% of the course. We'll be running cells, adding cells, or removing and running code or markdown, either one of them inside Jupyter Notebooks. Okay, so I hope this was clear. Let's go and start our code along lecture where we'll use Python as a calculator and understand how Python works when we give Python some numbers and some functions and all that. I'll see you in the next lecture.